Welcome to TYT Sports and Rotowire, here with the Rotowire managing editor, Chris List. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Ben.
Chris's podcast is East Coast Offense.
Yes, it is.
Listen to that. Subscribe to Rotowire. Read his Beat the Book column as well. So last week we made some picks. I feel like I was 2-2, but I was conceptually 3-1. So I think I should get paid.
Which one did you get screwed on?
The Raiders. At plus 5.5.
The pick six.
Yeah, the pick six. 2 missed field goals from a guy who doesn't miss field goals that close. You know, he hits one of those field goals, we're in a different kind of game.
Yeah.
So, you know, a tough loss, but I got it. I won Washington easily and won Arizona easily. And the Giants, I think you had too. We were just wrong.
Right.
It looked good there for into the third quarter, and then all of a sudden the Niners figured it out. And our thought that Kaepernick, that I certainly had, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, that something was wrong with him. He looked shell-shocked. He looked panicked, not in this game, but previously, like he had no confidence. And then it was as if he said, I'm tired of listening to people. I'm going to play the way I play. So now I'm totally intrigued by the Niners going forward.
Yeah. You're not putting words into my mouth. I thought he was totally checked out.
Yeah.
I thought he had pretty much given up on life. You know,
Yeah,
I thought
totally.
He was just depressed. He was just
Right.
going into a spiral, and he was just doing it on the football field in front of 80,000 people. I think the Giants let them in the game. They were up 10, and they just started playing to get a first down. And
Yeah.
it started a third, and you got to play to score a touchdown. And if you get first downs, that's great. And they let him back in, but I really didn't see Kaepernick shredding the defense like that. That was surprising to me.
3 straight
Yeah.
length of the field
And Coughlin
touchdown
again,
drives. Yeah.
With the horrible end game management, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about that. We have a coaches segment. We can get into that.
We do, but just the moment of Eli going like this with 40 seconds to play. You know, like, and I mean, then he turned out, you know, then he made nothing but great. But the guy played an unbelievable game. But,
amazing game from Eli.
Yeah. All right. So how'd you do last
I was 1-2-1. I pushed on Seattle at Cincinnati. You know, it was a crazy comeback. I felt lucky to get the push, but at the same time, Seattle got the lead because of a fumble recovery touchdown, which is garbage. And in the end, when they were in overtime, you know, Cincinnati was dominating them. It was just a matter of time. Kansas City, Andy Reid, that's another great one for the coaching segment.
It is. I liked, as you know, I liked the Bears in that game. I didn't bet them.
You did like them.
Yeah.
They were down 17-3 or whatever, and I don't know. And then Jamal Charles got hurt. Not that Charles is that important, but they acted like he was.
Yeah.
Obviously, Philly rolled. That was easy. And then, you know.
You actually talked me into Philly. I ended up playing that.
At least I did something right for somebody last week.
You did something right for someone. Yeah. So they moved, you know, Philly opened, that went off at 6.5.
Yeah.
That game moved substantially. And Arizona, which I guess opened at 3, went off at 5.
Once you change your mind, I think that moved.
Because
I know how big you bet. So
that moved the country. All right, let's take a look at what do you have this week?
All right, so here's what I have. I got New Orleans getting the hook at home against Atlanta. New Orleans is a total doormat. I think this is not the New Orleans of the last couple of years ago. They really suck. Being at home isn't that big a deal. So why am I taking him? Julio Jones is banged up. I don't know if he's completely himself. I really don't. If he is, he'll probably torch them. If he isn't, I think this will be a close game. These teams always seem to play close no matter who's doing well and who's not doing well. And I just think 3.5 in New Orleans, good enough for me, taking the Saints. Yeah,
and look, at some point, the Falcons are going to lose a game. I mean, they've played with fire 4 of 5 games down in the fourth quarter. You know, we again, for the coaches segment, Jay Gruden couldn't have done more to not come back and tie that game by not calling timeout at the end. Leaving himself with 24 seconds, and then somehow that was enough time. He had 3 timeouts in 24 seconds, left 2 on the board. But then it turned out to be enough. But nonetheless, the Falcons had no chance of covering that game at any point, really, once it started. So I agree.
And that was at home where they're a lot better.
I'm probably going to lay off that because I'm applying the rule that I would normally apply in that game is what you're doing. Like, it's clear. The Saints are probably winning that game. Right?
There's a good chance.
They look so terrible that I'm trying not to fall. I'm trying to stay away from teams that look so terrible that I can't do it. But I would never bet Atlanta in that game in a million years.
Yeah, I see what you're doing. You're doing contrarian, bet on the teams that people are underrating. But if it's below a certain floor,
can't do it.
You just can't do it.
I can't do it.
Because when you watch and it happens and they live it.
Right, and I'm like, I knew this. I knew this. What am I doing? Right.
It's hard.
But I hear you. That's a bold pick, and I like it.
All right, you want to go with yours or you want me to keep going?
Sure. Well, let's keep going with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kansas City is at Minnesota. They're getting 4. And I have to say, Kansas City is such a joke. I mean, their coaching and their game management is terrible. But I just feel that this is right. This is the right time to get back in. I don't really think they're that bad defensively. I don't think Minnesota can exploit their beatable secondary. I don't think they have the deep passing game. I think Bridgewater was overrated coming into this year. I'm going to take the points in KC.
All right, we'll talk about that. I'm on that game as well. We'll talk about that when I make my picks.
Okay, I'll keep going. Houston, this is like my 4th out of 4, but Houston -1 at Jacksonville. I think Hoyer is considerably better than Ryan Mallett. He's bad, but he's bad in like an a Josh McCown type of way. Like he's just fine as a starter. And I think they're going to light up Jacksonville. And I think Bortles will move the ball against what's surprisingly a very weak Texans defense. But I think that eventually Bortles will make the pick 6 or the big mistake. So I am laying the point with Houston.
Yeah, I have Houston in the TYT Fantasy League. That was my defense, and I felt so good. Like they were like the 7th defense. I'm like, oh, you guys screwed up. I got them so late. This is great. And they're a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have that game. So I hear you. That's where I'd go. I feel the same way about the Hoyer-Mallett situation. There's a little bit of the Saint issue in that game that I like. You're going to bet on Houston to win a football game?
Yeah.
Like that's
on the road, laying a point.
Right. Exactly. That's a frightening decision. So I would stay away from it. That game I can't do.
Okay. And finally, my best bet of the week, and this almost certainly falls into that category for you also, is I like Detroit at home laying 3 against Chicago. I mean, Detroit, it's just gross, right? I mean, Jim Caldwell, again, we talked about Jim Caldwell and Matt Stafford are your people when you bet them, right?
No, totally.
So those are my guys. Come on, Jim, let's make a decision on 4th down or whatever. I mean, you're living with that. That's your thing. But I just think they're 0-5. They were a playoff team last year. They nearly won in Seattle. And I just feel like this is the game they win. It's a winnable game against a pretty bad team at home, and this is just the game they win. They're 0-5. They're desperate. They're going to win this one.
Were they a playoff team last year, or is it 2 years ago? Really?
Yeah, and they should have beat Dallas, but for a bad call.
Oh, right, of course. That was last year.
And Dallas should have beat Green Bay, but for a bad call. And Green Bay should have beat Seattle, but for horrible coaching. And Seattle should have beat New England, but for a fluke play at the end of the game. So the Lions should have won the Super Bowl.
I am a John Fox believer, not a John Fox believer. Individual game, make the right call. I mean, he'll punt. We know that.
Oh, he's
right?
a punter, yeah.
But turning a team around, and I think that team is fine and going to end up being better than they think. I'm vested in them for the year. Every win they have is valuable to me. So I'm a little biased because I believed it going into the season, and I panicked after 3 games, and now they've won 2 late. They weren't exactly terribly impressive wins,
right,
but they were wins. And because I can't see, again, same rule. I mean, it barely applies to Houston, but it definitely applies to New Orleans and Detroit right now. Can't do it. I got it.
I knew it was going to fall under there, but
no
feel good. I feel good about Detroit winning.
I looked at that game and I thought, well, Detroit 3 at home. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, I think Detroit's D is better and their weapons are better. The big advantage for Chicago is mild at coach. I think John Fox is an idiot, but whatever. Maybe he's a good leader of men. Could be an idiot.
Well, every place he's gone, the defense doesn't just get better; it gets pretty good. Right. We haven't really seen that in Chicago yet, but it gets good. They become, he can coach defenses, and I think
he used to be a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, right.
That's for the Giants.
That's where he came from. So his defense is always good. Even counting when he was coordinating, his defenses were always good. So those 3 games you were on the correct side. Detroit, New Orleans, and Houston. Too ugly.
I understand.
Too ugly.
I understand.
All right, let's. I'll tell you what I have. Let's start with the game that we share. I also have Kansas City +4. By the same token that I guess I may not be overly biased because I'm vested in the Vikings as much as the Bears. Each Viking win is valuable to me. I'd love to see Minnesota win that game. It just feels right with Kansas City. I don't think that losing Charles is that interesting to see what kind of player West is. We know Niall Davis is a capable running back. He hadn't played hardly at all. Macklin has changed that offense.
He's not going to play, by the way, that much. It's going to be Charkandrick West.
Yeah, no, I signed him. I had
you picked up West.
I got him. I'm on him. Yeah.
I was on West before the season.
Were you?
Terrence West.
Terrence West. No, so you're fine.
Yeah,
you're totally fine. No, I said, West and I just think that's what I'm saying. I don't know how big a giant loss Charles is.
Right.
Macklin really has changed that offense, and Kelsey is a really top-notch tight end. And so I'm not sold on the Vikings, and you're getting more in the field goal. I like Kansas City a lot in that game. Moving up, I like Buffalo because, I sort of, I think teams, there seems to be, I'd love to, I don't know how you'd quantify it to study it, but that big emotional win during the season, not during the playoffs where we can get back, the big emotional win during the season is frequently followed by a letdown. And in this case, you're going on the road to a difficult place to play against a competent team that hangs around games, and they're getting more than a field goal. I feel like Cincinnati's first loss of the year comes this week in Buffalo.
I like Buffalo, but remember, Tyrod Taylor might not play. And then you got E.J. Manuel. That was the only thing that made me not take Buffalo there.
Well, I didn't even consider that. I'm going to be 100% honest.
E.J. Manuel literally couldn't, where Dan, our producer, is, behind the screen 10 feet, he literally could not take a football and throw it to him when that was where Sammy Watkins would be, wide open, and he could not get the ball to him. So that's the only reason I passed on the game. But I'm still going to take Buffalo
if he plays.
But I'm not going to use him as one of my four.
I got you. So, but right now I like Buffalo. Obviously, look, if Taylor doesn't play, things change. That relates to our next game as well because, look, I'm going to take Arizona until somebody tells me not to. I mean, the one game that they didn't cover this year with the Rams, I still feel like flukish. How did they not recover a fumble that was under their just sitting next to them at the 3-yard line? They fumbled and the Rams recovered on the opening kickoff. And then things that the Cardinals aren't doing all year. Palmer missed open receivers. Larry Fitzgerald dropped a first down. The tight end dropped a first down. Gresham dropped a first down. And David Johnson dropped a touchdown pass. And they kicked field goals. They're great. And the Steelers cannot keep up with them.
Yeah, the only issue there, of course, and you mentioned it, is what if Roethlisberger miraculously plays? Of course, that's a lot of points to lay against the Roethlisberger Steelers.
But don't you feel like when guys are like going to come back early, it's always 1 week later? Like Roethlisberger's going to come back, next week.
It might be, but this is a dude who had his face smashed through a windshield on a motorcycle accident in somewhere in June, made it to the first day of training camp, got his appendix removed at the end of the summer, missed only 1 week. This is what we call our contemporary ancestors. Okay, this is basically a gorilla, that shouldn't even be allowed to play in the NFL, but he is. And I would never get a bet against him returning a little bit early.
I got you. I know, but of course, even if he returns next week, he's returning early. I mean, this is clearly
way early.
No matter what it is, it's way early. That's why I think it's going to be a good bet. It feels like the kind of thing it's 1 more week, but that guy is unbelievably tough, and that changes things. And in my main league, by the way, I have Bell and Brown. So I mean, let's go.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go. Come back.
Yeah.
I bet the Steelers on Monday night, and it was a great win. But it was so
I had the Chargers.
Awful to watch.
As long as you're ashamed of it,
I'm definitely ashamed of it. I'm like, wait a minute, they're going to win the whole game?
Right. I was hoping they won the game at that point because they'd already blown the cover pretty much.
Yeah. And then last, as I said when we started this conversation, based on what we saw last week and how wrong I was on Kaepernick, I think that. Baltimore might not be that good, just flat out not good, and San Francisco getting some points at home. I'm prepared to be wrong, and maybe they score 6 points and lose a game 27-6. I can't say I'd be totally surprised, but that guy seemed totally different, and if he continues to play that way, they're going to win some games, and they're certainly more interesting.
Yeah, I like Baltimore here a little bit, but I agree. Like I kept thinking, John Harbaugh will fix that defense. Dude, he's been lit up by the Browns, the Raiders. I mean, at some point, it's just a bad defense.
That's right. It's a bad defense.
I'm going to fade the Kaepernick resurgence. I think that's just a mirage. I think the Giants let
him. Totally. It could be a mirage. And so but I've decided, nope, I'm buying in right now. And but I'm only buying in for a week. Although if he wins this week, then I'm doubling down.
Okay. I'm with you on the first three. I'm against you on that last.
All right. So let's recap real quick. So put up the Chris's picks.
Okay. So my picks are the Saints, the Chiefs, Houston, and the Detroit Lions, and I'm very proud the Detroit Lions won.
All right, the Lions, Saints, and Houston. Man, you're not going to enjoy watching.
No.
That's for sure.
No, I'm just going to know.
Okay, mine are San Francisco at home, Arizona on the road, Buffalo at home, Kansas City on the road. All right, there you go. Remember to subscribe below. Thanks for watching, everybody.